Hey everybody, it's your buddy Rick Garrett from Indianapolis, Indiana, Happy Cat Studios. I had a happy cat laying back here just 2 minutes ago and he jumped away as soon as we started live. I guess he didn't want to be on camera this morning. With my good friend Trent. Trent, how are you this morning?
I'm doing well, Rick. How about you?
I am A-OK. It is a beautiful morning here in Indiana, bright blue sky, and the sun is shining, and just about perfect fall weather. So, anyway,
All overnight, really.
oh my gosh, yes.
80 to
Saturday night was
50.
freezing. Oh my gosh, I don't deal with cold weather very well,
Yeah.
and I was just freezing. That's what happens when you get old like me. See, this is what you've got to look forward to.
You would have been entertained watching my wife walk around the Oregon district on Saturday night.
Really,
Huddled up.
it was chilly. It was certainly chilly. So, well, today we're going to take a few minutes and talk about ways to reduce stress in everyday life. And, no matter what our job is or no matter what our life situation is, we all have stressors in everyday life. And I've put together 5 tips that I'm actually working on for a future podcast. And I thought we would just talk about it a little bit, Trent. Uh, and maybe Mahmood will get a chance to pop in here a little bit later. But number one is really simple, and that's taking care of yourself. And here's something I've really noticed, and research has played it out. Folks who are involved in careers where they're taking care of others, like the medical field, psychologists, paramedics, ministers, those who spend their lives taking care of others, we're often the worst at taking care of ourselves for some reason. We're putting so much effort into taking care of everybody else. And I think the same goes for parents. We put so much energy into taking care of our family, taking care of our kids, that we neglect to take a little bit of time to take care of ourselves. And would you agree with that, Trent? Would you agree with that statement?
Oh, absolutely. I think, you mentioned pastors. I think they are probably the least looked after people out there. They have to deal just with so much crap constantly. They have to deal with um, people don't see the counseling side of it. All the counseling they do, they're constantly hearing problems, which means
Right.
they're constantly hearing about stress, and that's weighing them down. And parents, I mean, one of my roles is I kind of take charge of the lunches each day. And there are some days where I walk out of the house and realize I didn't pack myself one.
Right.
I
Right.
made sure my wife and kids have lunch, but I forgot to pack myself one.
And I think that's pretty common. So taking care of ourselves. So we can't really take care of others unless we're taking care of ourselves. So um, I am so sorry that my notifications are going off. I don't know how to turn that off. So
That's okay. That's why it's live. It's fun.
that's why it's live. So here's a couple of tips for taking care of ourselves. Number one, and you're probably a lot better at this than I am, Trent. Eat healthy, well balanced meals. When
I've
you're
actually been working with Missy on that.
oh yes,
Missy from Let's Be Real, she's kind of been getting my butt into gear on eating healthier.
right, right. And if you've not checked out the rest of the shows on the Business Shenanigans page, please like that page. There are some fantastic shows on here, and Missy does a fantastic job. So, eating healthy, we neglect, I think, to realize how much nutrition plays in our mental well-being. When you're incredibly busy, the temptation is to run through Burger King, McDonald's, fast food, and just pick up a burger instead of taking the time to put together a well balanced meal. This is another one that I've really been working on in addition to eating well is exercise regularly. And I think sometimes we think of exercise as joining a gym and just really dedicating our lives, but it can be something very simple. It can be just a simple walk around the block. And Trent, a couple of weeks ago you mentioned you kind of do that on a regular basis, right? You get up from your desk and just go for a little bit of a walk.
Oh, I have to. And really, what I found out too is mentally, um, it gets me back on it. I will get to the point where I I might have a client situation I'm trying to think through,
Right.
and I can't think of a simple solution. I will go take a walk around the park for 5 minutes and it'll come to me. And it's like, why couldn't I think of that at my desk?
That's right. And I think, we forget that those little short exercise breaks, walking around the block, taking a quick walk in the park, hopping on your bike and just riding around your neighborhood, not only has physical benefits, but it allows us to clear our head a little bit and think about the task, maybe the next task coming up. Get plenty of sleep is another way to take care of ourselves. And that's one that I really struggle with, as a musician, entertainer. My schedule sometimes is all over the place. I might be working till 2 o'clock in the morning one day and then have to be at a meeting at 9 o'clock the next morning. So, getting plenty of sleep is really important, and it can be a real challenge to those of us who work on, really interesting, varied schedules. And one that I had not put on my list, but it came to me when you were talking about ministers, about all that ministers deal with, of which I am one. It's really important, no matter what your job is, that we learn to set boundaries. That's a really difficult thing for me. Many ministers feel like they're on the clock 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And if the phone rings, you've got to answer it. And there are times when people are in crisis and you really have to deal with it at that moment. But it's important for all of us, no matter what our job is, what our circumstances are, I think, to set boundaries for our time and our attention so that we can, take care of ourselves. And there's Mahmood. Welcome, my friend.
I'll take the blame for that one. That's my fault. I didn't send out the calendar invite. I'm terrible at those.
Well, our Moroccan superhero has swooped in and is here to save us all. Mahmoud, today we're talking about ways to take care of ourselves, ways to kind of combat those everyday stressors that we all have. And we just got talking about eating healthy, taking little exercise breaks, and that kind of affects our concentration, helps our concentration and our physical health. And we were just talking about setting boundaries. I think that's something a lot of us struggle with, setting boundaries for our attention.
I think Mahmoud's great at that, actually. He is really good, and I'd love to hear his thoughts on this. He's good at setting boundaries with his work-life balance, because he will actually go disconnect for a while. Right, Mahmoud?
Yeah, I try to do it in like small increments and also like big increments. So when you look at the 12-month calendar, I try to pepper little weekends here and there that are like short term, just break the pattern, go do something completely unrelated, off the grid, or hunting. Like I have a hunting trip coming up in South Dakota. I try to go to places where there's no this. Like I can't get distracted because I'm surrounded by screens all day. So the minute I see an opportunity to go where there's no internet, I jump on it. So hunting trip, camping trip, canoeing, whatever, anything. And then you've got your big ones, your big pattern breakers, the big vacations. So I'll also plan a couple of family vacations with the kids, or 3 of them. And then same thing, when I'm off. When I'm off, I'm off. Maybe I'll do an hour in the morning before the kids wake up, like work. And then after that, like I'm off.
That's a real challenge for those of us that feel like we need to be connected, is to take this thing and turn it off. Isn't that a challenge?
It is. I mean, we've gotten, with my wife and I being not in the same fields, but, similar financial fields. I mean, she's had someone hounding her on Christmas Eve while she's trying to wrap presents. She's had someone messaging her and calling her on Thanksgiving Day while trying to prepare our Thanksgiving dinner. So I think the society we're getting into with email and everything, people are expecting all their answers to be answered now. And it's really hard to set those boundaries in this now society that we live in, when people have the cojones to message someone and call someone on Thanksgiving Day of all days.
Right. Right. And, it's obvious that, those are not like life and death situations, right? I mean, they're financial questions, which is important. but we really need to work on setting boundaries. And you know, I think maybe sometimes the most difficult boundaries to set are boundaries for ourselves. Um, you know, for me, maybe to set a boundary, I'm not going to answer the phone between 9 a.m. and 2 p.m. I'm just not going to answer it. You know, that's a difficult boundary for me to set. Um, either one of you have thoughts on setting boundaries for yourselves?
Absolutely. I mean, that's what voicemail is for. That's why texting is for. Yeah, I mean, it's really hard because for me, this is my personal phone and also a work device. I make a living out of my phone, so to separate the two is pretty difficult, but it's doable.
Right.
Like you look at your notifications and you're like, all right, I'm not gonna touch this one. I'm not gonna touch it. Oh, this is a family member. Let me text them back. So you just make those decisions on the fly. But sometimes it's an emergency. So for me, like I would get the team involved. For example, if I see an emergency email from a client or something, it takes me 3 seconds to forward it to the right person, and
Right.
then I'm done. And if I'm needed, they'll reach out. If I'm not, it will get solved without me being in the way.
Very good. Trent, anything from you?
I mean, I kind of fear sometimes forgetting about it. And so even though it's stored right there in my email, if I see it come in, I have this urge to try to take care of it right away.
Hmm.
And so, like, I think I mentioned this on here before. Like, I'll do a set at the gym and then I'll hear a ding. And so, in between sets, I'm returning emails. And I'm afraid, like, I just don't want to leave it, you know?
Right, right.
Do you add it to your checklist? Because
That'd be a good
that'll
idea.
help you. That'll like something like hold on, something like this.
Yeah, I should do that.
So you can get
So,
this
Mahmood,
done
tell us
just
a
in
little
the
bit about that. Go into a little more depth about what that is.
yeah. So this is my master checklist. It's organized by like which one's more important. You can just find it on your like if you use an iPhone Notes, the app Notes.
Okay.
Is perfect. I'm sure Google Play has something similar, and it could also give you the option to have those check marks next to it. So when you hit
Yeah.
it, it's checked off. So let's say, for example, I get a text message from a customer and they think it's urgent. I look at it, it's not urgent. I know it's not urgent. It can wait. I put it on my checklist. Instead of going down to the rabbit hole and looking into it, I would maybe forward it to my web designer or my content manager or whatever, and then I'll put it on my checklist. So later when I go, because that's the first thing I look at when I sit at the desk, I look at my checklist and I'm like, okay, oh yeah, I need to take care of that text. Where is that? So that way, it takes it off my mind. You can't store everything in your mind. I've tried it,
It
failed.
doesn't work.
You can't go, oh, I'm going to remember that. No, you won't. You will never remember anything. So I put it on my checklist, and now I'm free. I can let go of that email. I can let go of that text message because I have it on my checklist.
Right.
When you don't, and you're just like, oh, let me mark that email as unread so I can see it later, that's when things start to stack up. And now you have 100 unread emails, 5 unread texts, Messenger, this whole thing. So all of that needs to be consolidated into one checklist.
That's a really good
And I put, by the way,
idea.
I put personal and professional. So you'll find
Okay.
groceries, do this, pay this bill, call this guy, etc., etc.
You made a good point about like you won't remember, and I'm going to start doing that for real. When I started out, I remember like the first 5 years I was in this business. I knew like every appointment I had, like just from memory. Like I knew my whole week, like as it was going. Like I had it all down in my head. And now, like I'll show up to work on a Tuesday and be like, I didn't know I had these 3 appointments today. so, so that's why I've just started like doing everything like as fast as possible. But I like your checklist idea.
Yeah, and I like
Awesome.
it too. Like when someone says, "Hey, can we connect? Because I want to talk about this." Yeah, I'll put it on the calendar that same day. Otherwise, it won't happen. So if it's not on the checklist and it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist.
That was my
like if
problem this
someone,
morning.
Yeah, like exactly. Like if someone, I didn't have like if someone reaches out to me and they're like, "Hey, can we do this?" Like that's the most opportune time to do something about it. Once you pass that 20-minute mark after you've talked about that task, that's in the ether of history now. It might come up later, it might not. So you have that little window of 5 minutes to put it on your checklist or put it on the calendar to pencil it down. And that way you free your mind. Your mind is not a hard drive. It's a processor. People need to stop using their minds as a hard drive. You can't store everything in there and process at the same time. It will bug. So use your brain as a processor and use something else as the hard drive.
I love that. I've never thought of it those terms, and that is fantastic. So we talked about setting boundaries. We talked about taking breaks and eating healthy. Another one that I want to mention is one that I really struggle with is find somebody to talk to if you need it. Just a personal observation over the past few weeks, I've been struggling with an opportunity I may have, and it's just been occupying all of my mind and all of my time. And last week, I thought I got to call somebody, and I called somebody who happened to be a fellow minister that I have a fairly long-standing relationship with, and we spent about an hour on the phone. And I can't tell you how much better I felt after just talking things through. And we didn't like make a decision, we didn't really resolve anything, but just that chance to talk back and forth and let them know what I was feeling and what I was struggling with was a huge help to me. Either one of you want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Trent, you want to go or?
Yo, you can go for it.
Well, I have a few people that I talk to usually. My wife, obviously, because she's my life partner, she's my business partner. So yeah, bouncing those ideas off. We basically have an impromptu meeting every lunch because we both work from home. So while having lunch, we will, talk about our stuff. I'll bounce ideas off, she'll bounce her ideas off, and that's how the magic happens. I also have a couple of friends in the industry. They're pretty technical. They do what I do, and those out like I would call them or text them on a daily basis, if not weekly basis. And those really help. Like you want to have those because the internal monologue sometimes is wrong. So you have to take that monologue and like share it with other people to get insight. Sometimes because you're so in the zone and you're putting your head down and you're working and you got that momentum that you forget to pull back and look at the big picture. And those conversations give you the opportunity to look at the big picture. Like, oh, wait a second, this is not a good trajectory. I gotta readjust a little bit. And that's what comes from those calls. Sometimes it comes from a call with the report, like one of my reports. Like I would be talking about my project, talking to my project manager, and they'll mention something. I'm like, oh my God, I've never thought of that before, and I'll put it on my list. It's those conversations are great because the internal monologue is not always right.
That's right. We need to bounce that off other people. Trent?
Mahmood knows this because he's been on a leadership team with me before, but I really like to surround myself with people that think differently than I do. I learned pretty quickly in my professional career that like it's easy to think that everyone kind of thinks and processes things the same way that you do.
Right.
But I mean, there's that car crash example though, where 10 people got interviewed and there were 10 different stories. And so I really like bouncing ideas off of people that just see the world differently than I do. And, my wife is that way. I will get tunnel visioned on something and I'll just bring it up to her and she'll be like, well, what about this? And that little tweak will make it great, but it wouldn't have worked without that little tweak. And I was on a leadership team with Mahmood and a lady named Sarah. And it was the same way. I would come to them with an idea and I would say, what about this? and Mahmood would give his input, and then Sarah would give her input. And by the end of it, it was a great idea. And so, definitely, and you need people like that in your life. I think it's really important to have people in your life that don't see the world the same way that you do.
I think that's a fantastic point. And, I can't stress that enough because I'm like you, I get tunnel vision and I want to do things one way. When it doesn't work out, I'm all frustrated when I should have stepped back and asked for somebody's input. So great point. Another one, we talked a little bit earlier about exercise, about going out, taking a walk or riding your bike or something like that. But I think it's important that we take some relaxation breaks, not really exercising, but just kind of a mental break, something that breaks your chain of thought a little different than exercise. For me, there's like a solitaire game I'm hooked on. And, it's really helpful for me a time or two a day just to, get away from the email, get away from the social media, get away from the planning, and just do something kind of mindless to break that chain of concentration. I don't know about you guys, but like if I'm trying to study on something, if I'm reading on something, I'll read so much and then everything just gets run together. It all gets all jumbled up. And I'll read for 5 minutes and then I'll think, what did I just read? And I know it's time to take that mental break. Do you agree, Trent?
Oh yeah. And I believe, I spoke on this last week, maybe a bit, but for me, you can take a giant stressful day, and for me, cooking dinner at the end of it just helps it all break down. And sometimes it means our family only sleeps 4 or 5 hours that night. But, but at the end of that day, I really like to make some kind of complicated ingredient, or the more ingredients, the more chopping, the better.
Right.
I want to see some onion and garlic simmering, an actual meal, not Prego and noodles.
I want to come to your house for dinner. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah, we've been trying to do that for a while. We need to make it happen. Apparently he makes a mean steak.
Oh, that sounds great. Well, I think that's something that's really interesting because Trent, your job, I'm assuming, is very analytical. You're dealing with facts and figures and numbers, but the process of cooking is very creative, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're putting something together. You're doing something very creative. I think we neglect exercising both parts of our brain sometime. That right lobe and the left lobe, the analytical side and the creative side. And I think taking those breaks where we, exercise the other side of our brain is really, really important. The side of my brain that works the best is my creative side. I'm great at coming up with ideas, and I'm great at doing some of those creative things. And, I can write music and lots of other different stuff, but my analytical side really needs some work because that's a struggle. That's a real struggle for me. So that's something we should really think about is which side of the brain do we not use as much, and how can we do that?
Yeah, the creative side of mine's pretty dormant.
Well, I can help you with that, actually. Maybe you can help me with the analytical side. And so the last one I have on my list, we kind of touched on, but we touched on, excuse me, talking to somebody when we just need somebody to talk to. But, unfortunately, this has the potential to be fairly dark. There is still a stigma about mental health in our country, I believe. There is still a stigma about seeing a mental health professional when we are really struggling with depression or whatever it might be. We really need to feel free when those talks with friends or coworkers just are not enough. We really need to feel free to seek out those professionals that are trained to deal with what we're going through and to get that kind of help. And I'm going to ask you guys an off-the-cuff question. How can we as individuals, as business leaders, how can we help overcome that stigma, that mental health stigma? Trent, I'm going to call on you first.
I think patience and awareness is huge.
Right.
Because some people say that the awareness is increasing, which I think is true.
It is. I would agree.
But also just the pressures on people are increasing. And so I think it's legitimate when people say, there are more people suffering from anxiety than before. There are more people suffering from depression before. I don't think it's just that the awareness has increased. I think
Right.
just as the pressures of our society increase, so do those things. Roles have changed in the households. Um, Everyone is busy now. Everyone is out. People aren't connecting. I mean, there might be an entire day where a family of four sees each other for a total of an hour and a half. So I think those pressures are just mounting on
Right.
individuals. They're mounting on families. And so I think the end result on the corporate side is, a happy employee is going to do a whole lot better for you than one stressed out to the max, because there's only a certain amount of time until they break down, they take time off, they job switch, whatever. But if you actually want a quality, talented employee that you're going to retain for the long term, you need to give them those mental health breaks. You need to have the patience and awareness to see that you can't push them 24/7.
Those are great points, and patience is something that I big time struggle with. Mahmood, how about you? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is to not self-diagnose immediately. I see a lot of instances where people will be like just, having a bad day. Like I had a really bad day on Saturday. People would self-diagnose immediately. Oh, okay, I have depression. I'm depressed today, or I have anxiety, or like let the professional diagnose you.
Right.
The minute you put those thoughts in your head, now you're going down slow. I'm not saying mental health is not a thing, but those things are all, like, we all have them. We have depression, we have anxiety, we have all these things. But self-diagnosis is more dangerous than those actual things, because you're now implanted it in your head.
Right.
You got to go to a professional, just like Rick said. There's no shame in that. There's no, nothing wrong with that. And go get the professional to diagnose you. My other point was going to be what was the question? Can you repeat that question again?
Oh, sure. So how can we kind of, as business leaders, as folks involved in the community, how can we kind of fight that stigma of seeking help when we need it?
Well, I think at this point we all realize that. Let me go back a little bit. Maybe 20 years ago, 25 years ago, we had the same amount of time. We had 24 hours a day, but we only had one landline, a couple newspapers, and maybe email, and or maybe snail mail, and that's how even corporations worked. So fast forward to today, we have all these other things, all these screens, all these
Right.
tasks. Things are going faster. We're expected to do things faster, but one factor has not changed, is the time. We still have 24 hours. So now we're cramming all that stuff in the same 24 hours that we've always had. Of course, it's going to be anxiety. Of course, it's going to be stress, depression. It's very, very normal. But we cannot just succumb to that. We have to find our anchors. We have to prime ourselves. So let me talk a little bit about that. An anchor, or like anchoring your day, or priming your day, is very, very crucial, especially if you lead a fast-paced life, like us. We're like go from 7 in the morning until God knows when, like until the kids go to bed, basically. You gotta have me time. I think I've talked about this before. Me time is what anchors your day, either in the morning. So today I didn't do it in the morning. Usually I would go break a sweat, shower before anything happens with my day. That way I am ready, mentally ready I'm not just stumbling out of bed with a cup of coffee and like getting stuff done immediately. That's not the right approach to do it. At least for me.
Right.
Or if I miss it, I gotta anchor my day somehow. So after the work day today, maybe around 4, I'll just split. I'll go for a run. I'll do something for myself. I'll take a shower before I can go pick up my kids. So I either prime my day in the beginning, or if I miss that window, I would go and anchor my day somehow with a little reset button, an hour to myself before I can go and be a dad after 6 p.m. or 5 p.m.
That's awesome. I love that.
That keeps me balanced. So I'm not
Right.
just a mule. My day is running me. I'd like
Right.
to run my day, not the
Right.
other way around.
Right.
How about you, Rick? What are your thoughts?
Well, I think you caught me off guard. I've got the deer in the headlights.
I mean, you asked us. You have to answer it too.
I do. So as far as breaking that cycle of a stigma, I think we really have to allow people to know that mental illness is a real illness, and mental illness is not feeling down because it's gloomy outside. It's not, just being stressed because you've had a bad day. But when you reach that point where day after day after day, you just feel this hole closing in over you, and I have absolutely been there. It's time to seek out a professional, and we need to let people know that mental illness is as real as any physical illness you may have. And there are degrees. Some are like a common cold. It just takes a little bit of time and a little bit of treatment. Some are like cancer, and it may take months or years of treatment to get over it. But we need to realize that mental illness is as real as physical illness. And for the three of us, and I'm going to speak as from my role as a minister now, when somebody comes to me and says, man, I'm really struggling with this, I need to really think about, okay, is this something that I'm qualified to deal with? Is this something they're just struggling a little bit, they just need somebody to talk to? Or do I really need to refer them to a professional? Is this something much more deep-seated? That kind of wisdom of, fortunately or unfortunately, comes, I think, a lot with age and a lot with experience. But for those of us who people seek out to talk to, I think we need to have some discernment. Can I really help this person? And there is no shame if somebody comes to you with a problem that we're not able to help with. There's certainly no shame in saying, man, I am so sorry, but I don't know. I'm not qualified to address this. Can I refer you to somebody? So just a couple of my thoughts there.
Love it.
Yeah.
So
And we don't have to talk to a professional. I mean, we can talk to other
Right.
people. We have, spouses, friends. It's nice to talk about it, because just the fact of not necessarily fixing the problem, but just talking about it and verbalizing whatever is going on is in itself helpful.
it's that unloading process. We're carrying that weight around. We're carrying a pack upon our back with all this junk. And sometimes all we need is for somebody to grab one of them straps and take the pressure off of us, take the weight off of us a little bit.
Absolutely. So, I just did that on Saturday. My wife came home from a baby shower, and I just had a terrible day all day. Nothing worked that day. and when she came in, I just had like a half an hour when I just unloaded, and it felt so good just to talk about my day and just like, oh my gosh, and she was really helpful. And afterwards I just realized this ain't bad.
Right.
I'm healthy, my kids are healthy, and it just felt refreshing to get all of that out and talk about it to someone.
Sometimes we just need a little perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Again, internal monologue needs to come out. You can't
Right.
just be talking to yourself. You poison your thoughts when you keep that internal monologue going.
Right. Great thoughts. Trent, anything from you?
Nothing else from me. I do want to give a quick plug here before we jump off. The Rick Rambles podcast. Rick, you have one dropping today, right?
It's already out. So today we start off with some fun facts about one of my heroes, Mr. Rogers, and I'm sure y'all are familiar with Mr. Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little teaser. You all know the actor Michael Keaton, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who the best movie Batman there ever was in my mind. I love his role as Batman. Did you know that he got his
The
start
original Batman.
That's right, the original Batman. Did you know that he got his start on the Mr. Rogers show?
I didn't.
Yes. So lots of fun facts about Mr. Rogers, and we got a segment on playing, how playing helps us be healthy. As adults, sometimes we forget just to go out and play, right?
Mm-hmm.
We need those times just to go out and play. Lots of other fun stuff. So Rick's Rambles, just look it up on your favorite podcast provider, the Rick's Rambles podcast, every Monday morning.
Awesome.
Great discussion this morning, guys. I got a lot out of this one.
Oh, me too.
So
Every time I talk to Mahmood, I take notes. So.
I've met.
Dang it! I didn't take any notes.
That's okay. That's all right. So we'll be back next Monday.
I'll refer to the live.
That's the good thing about this. We can go back and scroll through and say, "Oh, I need to remember that and write it down."
Mm-hmm.
So we'll be back next Monday morning, right?
That's right.
All right. Trent, see ya.
See ya.
Mahmood, so good to
See
see
you guys.
you again. And the rest
Good
of
to see you
y'all,
too.
we'll see you next week.
Have a great rest of you.